Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take concepts, strategies, practices that we use in autism fitness training and bring them to you so that you can bring them to your autism and neurodivergent athletes, whether you're running fitness programs or PE programs in a school, in a clinic, in some type of other organizational setting, so that you have the best practices that lead to the best outcomes. Before I get started, please like and definitely subscribe to the channel so that you never miss another Tuesday training or anything else that I put up. So in this edition, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the importance and the practice of our assessment process in autism fitness, that being the PAC profile that I developed years ago, because what I recognized was that we're not just taking baseline or assessing physical capability. There is also the adaptive, I'll get into that, and the cognitive capabilities as well. When we're talking about adaptive functioning, what we're really looking at is the motivation and engagement of the athlete. And cognitive functioning, we break into neurological and neuromuscular. They do have interaction between the two, but very important to understand each one separately as well. And all of these things will ultimately influence our exercise selection, our sets and repetitions, the way that we interact with our athlete to provide the greatest experience for them and the best positive support, and how we communicate with our athletes, our coaching style, how we coach, how that athlete appreciates and interacts with us, with the environment, and everything else. So the reason that we assess, the reason we assess at all is to get a baseline understanding of where that athlete is right now with a particular exercise, with the type of and robustness of the instruction that we're giving, and the type of coaching cues that we need to provide, and of course their level of motivation and engagement with a particular exercise. And we always want to go as specific as we possibly can when we're performing an assessment, because I won't say the last thing that we want to do because it's hyperbolic, but it serves us no purpose to speak or assess with generalities in mind. And what I mean by that is, and I hope this doesn't even exist by the time I post the video, but when I still hear it when we talk about high functioning or low functioning, which in any capacity give us practically no usable information. And even when an individual does not necessarily have a robust amount of verbal communicative skill, that tells us very little, if not nothing, about their auditory processing and their cognitive processing and their other neurological capabilities. It just tells us that this individual at this particular moment or up until now has not had a highly functional verbal communication system or ability. But that does not negate all these other things. So we fall into these really problematic traps, and it's also disrespectful of that particular individual to just say, okay, well, they're low functioning just because of this variable, or they're high functioning because of this. So what do we do, especially in the context, or particularly in the context of exercise and fitness or adapted PE programming? What we need to understand is, from the athlete's experiential level and from what we can observe, how well is that athlete performing that particular exercise with the coaching or the instruction that we're providing? How can we optimize that? And what structures do they need in support of performing the exercise to their best current level of capability? Now, if we don't have an assessment process in place, well, then there are a couple of very significant and important guardrails that are falling off. And the guardrails are, number one, the programming. In order to have an effective program, we need structure to that program. The structure, when we're talking about the physical component, comes down to the exercise selection and volume. How many sets, how many repetitions per set, and then we look at the quality of the movement. If we are assessing an athlete during their first or second session, and they are, for example, doing a hurdle step, or they are doing an overhead band walk, and we notice that the athlete is either losing stability, or we see some type of contraindicated movement pattern, meaning that the technique in the movement is breaking down. The faulty and problematic, again, guardrails off assumption, is, well, it'll just get better over time. Without the appropriate modification of the exercise, it's not just going to get better, because the assumption is that, number one, the athlete is automatically going to appreciate what to do with that exercise in order to enhance the movement pattern. Two, that the athlete is currently capable of performing the athlete at a higher level than they physiologically are capable of doing. And that three, just by way of time and practice, that movement is going to get better if we don't have some type of modification for that athlete. And the easiest way to talk about this in terms of exercise is if we are teaching somebody how to squat. It could be anybody, and they've never done a barbell back squat before. Would we load them up with 225 pounds and say, okay, go? No. Why? Well, the why is obvious. It's too much weight. It's potentially dangerous or injurious, and it's not at the point at which the athlete's current baseline ability is going to be met. Now, if we dial that back a lot, it's not to say that our athletes are going to get injured if they are doing a hurdle step improperly. That is a high unlikelihood. However, if we're not modifying that exercise, then the athlete is not benefiting as much as they can, because we're seeing this compensatory movement, right? The second part of that is actually the cognitive part, where the athlete may not be aware that they are engaging in this compensatory movement pattern, and how to do the exercise properly. That's where good coaching comes in. So when we're assessing for physical capability, that P in the PAC, when we're assessing for physical capability, we're looking at least right now in this session, what is the athlete capable of doing with respect to what we call the standard of the exercise. The standard of that exercise is, can they do it independently, full range of motion, motor control, right? All stuff that we do in the Autism Fitness Certification. When we are measuring adaptive functioning, and this is a big one because I do get questions about motivation on a fairly regular basis. I'm not going to do the internet thing where people ask me all the time, but it definitely is one of the top questions that I get about motivation. So rather than highly motivated or low motivated, what we want to do is, with each exercise, is the athlete engaged? And what we mean by engaged, if we're operationally defining it, is the athlete sufficiently focused that they will complete the entire set of that medicine ball push throw, or that overhead press, or that push-up, without some type of distraction or dysregulation, something that breaks up the repetition of this set. If not, awesome. If so, how can we support that athlete? And then finally, from a cognitive perspective, it is so crucial. I cannot overemphasize this, and I'm trying to measure this with being hyperbolic, but it's absolutely crucial to understand how your athlete communicates and how they receive communication, and what cues are going to be available to you as a coach and as an instructor that are going to be viable candidates as far as effectiveness. meaning if I use some type of visual cue for my athlete, can they follow with that, and what are their motor imitation skills? The second thing that I'll talk about, among many that many talking points here, is overcoaching, which I've spoken about. I think I bring it up in every other Tuesday training video, but the propensity to use way too much language. And again, this extends to the neurotypical population as well, but to use way too much language when we are coaching somebody, and it meanders from coaching into explaining. When we are explaining, it is starting to dilute the effectiveness of our instruction. So what other tools do we have at our disposal? Again, hint, in our autism fitness curriculum, we utilize very particular strategies in order to to provide the best possible coaching for that athlete for that particular exercise. When we are running an assessment, we are not figuring out, oh, is this more of a visual learner? Are they more of a tactile learner? Are they more of a verbal learner? Because that stuff doesn't really play out in reality. Each athlete is going to have some strengths with particular exercises, and they're going to have challenges with other exercises. So we need to modify our approach depending on which athlete and which exercise. If an athlete is completely independent with an exercise, awesome. Then we don't need to do much cueing at all. If an athlete is struggling to set up and get in the right position and perform an exercise with the right technique, we have to modify it, because again, it's not just going to happen automatically. So to bring it all around, the reason that we assess is to get accurate information about an athlete's level of capability with a particular exercise, about their level of motivation and engagement with that particular exercise, and then how we need to coach and communicate with that athlete in order for them to be successful. And that is for some of you, might be an introduction to the Autism Fitness PAC profile, and just as importantly, the need for assessment in order to program. We can't just bypass assessment and say, okay, well, we're just going to program however, because that's never really going to lead us to any type of meaningful goal for our athletes. In order to meet those goals, we need to know where we're starting, and that's how we measure progress. So I hope this has been clarifying and helpful. If you are interested in becoming an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, head on over to autismfitness.com. You can download the course syllabus. You can even register wherever you are in the world, and you can start your coursework almost immediately and then meet me or one of our Autism Fitness Master Level Pros for your full day virtual practical, where you get the hands-on, feet-on, brains-on training that you and your athletes deserve. I'm Eric Chessen, founder of Autism Fitness, leading the movement for movement. Thank you very much for watching.